Hi, this is Joe Moriarty, CEO of Raven 360. Thanks for joining in here for another edition of our Training-Led Growth podcast. I have a very special guest here from across the Atlantic Ocean in Munich, Germany. With me here today is Dirk Braune. Hello, Dirk.
Hi, Joe. How are you doing?
Great. Hey, thank you, Dirk, so much for joining in. So let me introduce Dirk a little bit, and then I'll get into some questions. So Dirk, I think you have a really interesting university background. You actually have a master's in psychology, which I think is what I want to talk about that. We'll get into that in a moment. So master's in psychology. And then pretty quickly after that, made your way into technology. And I just from the history that we can see, you started in HMT information systems, and then Genesis, Alcatel-Lucent, PTC, and brings us to your current role, which is Area VP of Education Strategy, Development, and Delivery at BMC. So tell me just a quick background. Tell me about the psychology masters, and then how did you get into technology?
Yeah, it's really an interesting one. I never could really decide between two areas. One is I love technology, and I even considered studying engineering. And then I discovered that's certainly not enough, and I looked more at the human, the personal side. And so when I studied psychology, I still looked for both options. What is technology-wise possible? And we had a research project about machine-human interaction. And part of that research project was also to deliver a few training classes. And suddenly I discovered there's a world where you can combine technology and people, and it's a wonderful possibility in the education space for technology companies. And so almost naturally, I became an instructor. And after becoming an instructor, you look at running businesses and managing teams. And hey, over time, I was evolving and moving into that space of education for customers and partners of software companies.
It's excellent. I bet there's, I'm always interested because I think there's a lot of psychology that goes into learning, just how people learn, how they like to learn, the different, do you find that? Do you find that there's psychology aspect to that?
Absolutely. I think it's both sides. Of course, if you manage teams, so internally in your team, you have a lot of psychology because you have human beings and you have to help them to grow and manage. And even if you look at the student side, it's similar. Just an example, when I was teaching, you look at people and their backgrounds, and everyone has a different learning style. And some people even in their nonverbal communication often express how they feel. And if you can read it, like some people hold their hand to the neck, feeling really almost like under pressure if they can't make progress. Having that as a background definitely helps in addressing people, helping, supporting, avoiding to embarrass people. Because if you take, as an example, you teach in Asia, you need to be very careful addressing questions to someone who is potentially not able to answer. So it's all about people and the way how they believe, how they learn, how they react at the end of the day. So I believe it's a core part of psychology. Absolutely.
So when you started, and so maybe take it from Genesis, Alcatel, PTC, and now BMC. How have you seen the learning industry related to technology? Because I want to drill into this deeper, but how have you seen kind of learning trends, or what's been the shift that you've seen in the career so far?
Yeah, I think when I started, it was absolutely kind of an assumption that everything happens in a classroom. The first classes at Genesis, for example, had a duration of 10 days. If you would, as an example today, ask any customer, hey, here's a 10-day training class, that's the minimum requirement to get started. It's unthinkable. So one is, I think the delivery modality of instructor-led only has gone away. If we deliver instructor-led today, it's often already online instead of in a physical classroom. That's one significant change. But the other significant change is certainly going more to a self-paced approach. You see the whole industry, the percentages of instructor-led going down. Massive increase of self-paced training. in all kinds of variations. Might be videos, might be recorded webinars, might be, we have a modality called assisted self-paced, where we have instructor video recordings combined with virtual labs, combined with virtual instructor help in case they have issues and problems. So I think the whole blended approach, or if in some cases you call it flipped classroom, all of that is really increasing and becoming more important. The whole story, we can talk more about personalization of education, about micro-learning. I think the changes are more dramatic in the last 5 years. And the first, I would say, 15 years of my career could base everything on experiences which are more or less instructor-led. That's now from a technology, from a delivery methodology, from the way how you provide your programs is dramatically shifting, including, by the way, we're not selling in transactionally anymore. We're selling our training often as subscriptions. So it's the whole approach of providing content and selling content is also very different.
When you first started, when you say transactions, would you have kind of a line item of the contract? And actually, I think this is a shift in software licensing too, right? Because people would sell seats to licenses and then training seats or per student per day pricing. And then now you've moved to the subscription. Does that match also how BMC also has moved to more of a subscription licensing model as well?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So what you can see is we call it an on-prem model, where in the past you purchased the software, you had the software forever. Every one of us knows it perhaps from Microsoft Office or Microsoft Windows. Even Microsoft changed their licensing model, and it's the same for BMC like it's for many other vendors. We have still a mixture. We have some on-prem products, and we have also SaaS products. And with the SaaS product, you naturally try to align your services. So if the product is on a subscription basis, having services also on a subscription, like maintenance, like education, like potentially even consulting. So almost a natural fit of these two together.
That's so, I want to ask, this isn't a hard question, but this is one that comes up, and us both being in education and technology, the sales teams have had to make a pretty big shift from selling licensed on-prem software to selling subscription-based software. And, as learning and as education, we've made the shift, right? We've made the same shift to subscription.
Yeah.
I have always found, and trust me, I come from a sales background, so I have a perspective on this, but we've found that sales sometimes still wants to discount learning, discount education, take that. Is that a challenge that you've had to kind of overcome? Because you're revenue generating. I mean, you guys are, you have a P&L and you've got to have margin goals and all of that same things the business has. But have you found in general that sometimes sales wants to cut the learning or education as a discount strategy?
Yeah, I think that's one of the areas which never changed. It's an ongoing challenge because you have to make sure that the value of education is internally and externally visible. And interesting enough, often it's not a discussion with the customer. The customer knows from different software, from different environments, because you invest in your leadership, in your compliance training, in your ITIL or your general technology training. And then it's natural, if you have a new software vendor, you need also training there. It's more an internal discussion sometimes to help to justify the expense, which is very tiny in comparison to the product. We are talking about perhaps 1%, 2%, 3% of the overall total cost of ownership. So it's relatively limited in comparison to the overall, but still you have a lot of discussion around it, why it's not automatically included. So it's one of the approaches we're taking is making it easy for sales to attach education, and keeping it as flexible as possible. So as an example, we have Learning Pass credits, which is a credit model where you buy the credits and then you apply the credits to all the services we offer. So from a sales perspective, relatively easy to do because you can almost from a percentage say, hey, 2% of the license deal is education credits. From a customer, it's flexible because they can later on decide if they use it for a group of administrators for an on-site class, or if they take a subscription, or they leverage license contents in different ways.
I've had to go through, I find myself doing this a lot, is helping education leaders actually present to sales the value in dollars and cents or revenue result. And one of the things we try to measure is how many experts are we creating? And, so in your case, how many BMC experts, product experts, are we creating through learning and training? And then if you can measure a level of expertise, and that might be taken 3 courses, 4 courses, gotten certified, a number of, you can define it in different ways. But we found if you can measure the number of experts that you create, you can then actually tie that user and tie that account to opportunities. Did they renew the contract at the end of the subscription period, and did it grow? Because they were experts, we found that people will purchase more if a new feature, if a new module, if something that BMC comes out with, they're typically great, happy users if they become expertise. Have you had to do that too? Do you find yourself needing to justify that with sales and the business in general?
Yeah. I think it's not only kind of a pressure to prove it. It's more also helping everyone to see the value in the communication to our customers, but also internally. So what we did as an example is we split the customers in customers trained versus non-trained, and then even the trained we split into a group of they invested just a tiny bit in education versus what we would call the kind of minimum requirements. And the impact on the business, we can see customers buying training, at least the minimum, buy already 2 times more product than customers who haven't taken any training. That's from our own interest. But then from a customer perspective, we see different levels of adoption. So in terms of how much of the product they can use, how quickly they use something. It's harder to prove sometimes the project progress, but there are different statistics from IDC and some other organizations, third-party organizations, which even show the project success rate versus failure rate is depending on the amount of training you have in a certain project. So from a customer standpoint, the adoption rate, the satisfaction of the project members and the employees. So one of the elements we are also providing is we create custom videos for our customers for the internal communication and enablement, because the acceptance of the product is as important like adding a lot of functionalities. If nobody wants to use it or there's a lot of resistance, you certainly delay the implementation process. So there's a few things where we can really prove the education part has an business impact to BMC, but it also has a very positive business impact to our customers.
That's great. I love that you said, well-trained versus someone who's, taken some training, even breaking the people who have taken and purchased training, breaking that down further and then tying that to opportunities and revenue is awesome. And I think that's critical.
Yeah.
And I think it's more critical now that everything's on a subscription basis. I mean, if you're tied to monthly recurring revenue or annual recurring revenue and you're measured on churn, do you find you're aligned with your customer success team? Do you guys have do you have a specific customer success business unit within BMC?
Yeah, more or less education is part of our customer success team, which includes our support organization, our education team, our consulting team. We definitely look at the different customers. We also look at, for example, how many tickets and open incidents they raise. Interesting enough, when we looked at that, initially everyone is expecting it automatically goes down. However, when we looked at the number of tickets, they didn't change dramatically. What changed is the type of ticket. Because if somebody is not trained, you would expect, and that's definitely the case, you get very easy questions, knowledge-related questions early on. If you have trained somebody very well, it's they still have questions and they still have challenges. They may be product-related, but they are more likely also in the advanced expert environment. So it was quite, we especially looked at our channel partners. We have a certification program with 3 levels. We make sure our partners getting trained on each and certified on each of these levels. And then you look at the ticket numbers, and the surprise was numbers are not going down, but the quality of the ticket is massively improving.
Yeah, so that's Sophia Yang, who you know, and I think you worked with at Genesis. So Sophia is our head of learning, who you worked with at Genesis, was also at GE Digital. She made that point recently, just very recently to me, which I thought was really enlightening, because we've had also customers say, well, we want to show tickets in support calls go down with a more well-trained user. And we found the same thing. We said, well, actually, the number of how-to calls and how-to tickets definitely went down. But the number, so it's a more valuable ticket. It's a more the problem that you definitely want to jump on and solve. Whereas the how-tos and the basics and those have, you can really reduce those significantly, which allows you to spend time on customers that really need the help, like right now. So that's
and it's still enabling the customer and enhancing it. It goes to the next level. So from a customer standpoint, instead of being stuck in even getting the minimum value out of the solution, you get to the next level that you can apply best practices and really can make sure you get the highest value out of your solution.
So let me shift gears a little bit on you here. BMC, what I would consider a robust product, many features, lots of functionality, and also growing every day. Engineering is, I'm sure you're probably on an agile engineering cycle. So we always say, you're 2 weeks away from a new feature, you're 2 weeks away from a new module that you could launch. How does BMC keep up with content? How do you as a learning and education team keep up with the pace of engineering and producing the right amount or the right content for your users?
It's certainly a big challenge, and whoever you talk in the industry, everyone is struggling with the same challenge. I think everything is about prioritization at the end of the day, because you have a limited team of people working on the material. Prioritization means for me, every product change is not necessarily a change in content you need. As an example, if you improve the performance of the software by 100%, you fix 5 bugs, it won't change the training content, because from a training content, you tell somebody how to perform a task. So the training content is changing if the user interface is changing. The training content is changing if you add features which allow the user to do something new with the product. So the first priority is to look at every release. How big is the user change? What is the necessary information we need to include related to the change for every of your target audiences? You look at potentially operators, administrators, end users. And so it's not necessary always to change completely or to change at all the user material. But if you change it, you really need to have an efficient model in terms similar like on the R&D side, having an agile education development approach, if possible, even combined with a single sourcing where you can take the same content and then provide it in instructor-led training versus in e-learning as an example. So, but it's definitely, it's a combination of art and science to figure out which priorities and what you're releasing.
Have you seen a shift in the types of content that people want to engage with in terms of, do you think YouTube and Instagram and Facebook, do you think these have had an influence on the type of content that people want to see and engage with?
Yeah, I think I would almost call it what we see as a course is dying, and content is replacing a course. What means practically, what is a course? Course is normally the vendor's assumption what people in average in a certain group have to learn. And it's a very unpersonalized approach, because I was teaching before, if you go in a class, you have 10 students, 2 of the 10 have never seen the product, 2 have perhaps worked for 2 years with the product, 3 are learning very fast, another 4 are having a hard time to learn very quickly, different age groups, etc. A course normally is not taking care of it. Now, where you have technologies combined with AI, you can start to personalize. You need very tiny contents, which you can recombine in personalized ways for the individual students. And that's really where I believe it's the long-term future. It's not easy to implement it in the first place, but as a consequence, what you have to do already now is modularize your content in very small bites, similar like if you take a YouTube 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then you recombine them for specific offerings. If it's a public offering versus a private training class for a specific customer. So I think that's certainly a change that it needs to be much more modularized than it has been in the past.
Yeah, we see the same thing. And I've said to a lot of people recently, I said, I think that a consumer of content, a learner, someone who wants to learn a technology, get smart, ongoing, I feel like they need two things. They want an authentic person to be speaking to them about the technology, and they want some expert. They want an expertise. If you can be authentic and you can provide some expertise on the given technology and topic, I feel like that's what people, and we have some data on it, but I think, and I asked you that because we're starting to see the shift faster and faster, and people ask me a lot. They'll say, well, we don't have the content. We don't, how do we produce it? And I'm so happy to hear you say that the course is somewhat dying, because I think it is. I think ultimately people just want to find that, give me the right, we all go to YouTube. I mean, if we have to fix something in our house or on your car or somewhere, first place we go is YouTube, because we're looking for some level of authentic and expert content. So I agree. I just was curious on your perspective on it.
Yeah. It's not going away that you have take our webinar here or as a live communication to people. So you complement more or less what you can learn in a self-paced manner with the challenges and issues you have by sometimes taking self-paced contents because you're lacking the possibility of interaction. But then if you combine that with chatbots, if you combine it with instructors more in a coaching session, where you look at the overall, what is the overall offering you need, where you combine really the content world with the coaching, the famous 70-20-10 model, where you say, okay, 10% is a formal training, and we ignored for a long time the 20% where you have more like our situation, a coaching discussion, or the 70% learning on the job. If you get these three elements together as one single offer, that's really where the value comes from.
I love that 70-20-10. And that 20 to me is almost the easiest one to fail at. If you don't have the coaching and the ongoing reinforcement and actually the psychology, right? Isn't that where
we still love to learn from people. However, we don't have the time, and it's not personalized enough if you have 40 people in front of you, worst case scenario. So, but in a coaching situation, to refresh it or to address your specific questions, it's certainly a great option.
Yeah, I love that 20. The 70-20-10 model is great. Great reminder. Let me ask you one other big concept question. Have you been thinking about, very popular now is kind of this learning in the stream of work, contextual learning. So, someone's in the BMC product and platform and gets stuck. How do they get to what they need right then and there? Have you been thinking about that? Are you deploying anything like that?
Yeah, our products to a large degree already contain the direct workflow help. It's a product called WhatFix we're using. There's a couple in the market space like Pendo, like WalkMe. And so what we do with WhatFix is you have at least in each of the fields already an explanation. You have small how-to videos included in the products. And then the next phase is to link more or less context-sensitive from the product into our training. It's our next phase, making sure that if you need more than just here's a 1 minute, 2 minute kind of quick help to understand these concepts, get some additional backgrounds, and then perhaps even practicing something outside of your environment, because that's the advantage of training. You have kind of an error allowance that you can work in a lab environment instead of in your real life environment. So that combination really will help us. One part we have already in the product, second part to link from the product into the training.
I think that is critical and going to be the future. And I just think it's not one thing, as you've said. I think it's that contextual learning in the stream of work, just in time learning, kind of when you need it. Some people still love a formal classroom setting,
Yeah.
A lot of people still love a formal classroom.
And you have the cultural differences, because I'm based here in Germany, for example, in Italy, in France, and in Spain. You have a really hard time. Even now with Corona, we have cases that we offer the same content online, but from a culture background, they heavily prefer the physical classroom experience, while in other countries, online is or self-paced is the most common. You can look at the satisfaction rates and the acceptance rates in terms of sign-up. There are significant differences between countries, perhaps sometimes also between the different generations we have in workforce. So it's really interesting to see that you need a blended and kind of a very variable delivery model, because you have very different acceptance rates and expectations in the market.
Super interesting. Yeah, we work with a lot of customers that use, certified or what I should say, certified training partners to go deliver the classroom training. And you're right, in Europe, it's much higher. It's the ILT is just a cultural where we see that. Now, I am very interested with coronavirus to see, if you can't travel and you can't go anywhere, are we going to see an uptake in the on-demand learning, the subscription-based learning? You would think so.
I think so too. Yeah. I definitely see a few of our online site classes we already were able to shift, even in Europe. And some it may take a little bit more time to acknowledge it's the better choice, at least in the moment.
Yeah. I mean, if you can combine the on-demand, the self-paced experience, if you have a live lab or a hands-on lab capability in there, or even maybe it's even virtual instructor-led. I mean, there's, if you can integrate Zoom or you can integrate some web conferencing. We use Zoom. We have an integration in our platform. So I feel that I think we could see a huge uptick, and I am curious long-term if that will stick, if the uptick from on-demand people will actually say, oh gosh, I could take this from home and I could take this from without traveling, and I learned just as well. I am very curious. I think, my hypothesis is that we may see more people just adopt that, but probably too early to tell. But I think, when you have a big incident like this happen, it sometimes can change things forever. I guess that'll. Yeah,
definitely. It's already something which is in progress, and you definitely can see it. When we look at, I found it very interesting. We looked at the consumption behavior of the contents also of our students. We have the modality called assisted self-paced, where you have the instructor videos. In a normal class, you take everything linear. If I look at the consumption behavior of our attendees of the assisted self-paced, it's completely jumping around, and it's not wrong. It's simply, if you have an opportunity to take the content depending what you really need in the moment, you suddenly have a different approach consuming information, consuming learning. And I think a lot of people will recognize if they have first time the opportunity to use something self-paced, that they really can cut down on time. They really can focus on things which are more interesting and skip ones. In the classroom, you have sit there and waiting until the next topic is coming, which is more interesting for you. So I think there's an added value, but the classroom at the same time won't go away. It's really kind of, we will probably see for the next 10 years, both worlds living together, but probably a stronger self-paced part.
Yeah, I agree. I think I agree that sometimes it takes a big, incident to happen to make people to make that shift happen a little bit faster. And maybe this will be it. Maybe not. We'll see.
Yeah.
Dirk, I feel like I could talk to you forever, but I want to be mindful. This has been very, very interesting. I'd love to have you back on. I think people that watch this are going to gain a lot of knowledge from all the things.
Yeah, great conversation. Thanks.
I really appreciate your time, and I'll be sure to call you back, and hopefully maybe we can do a part 2 on this.
Yeah, if there's interest, I would be very definitely interested. Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy Munich and stay healthy. And
same, likewise. Nowadays, the most important thing to ask and to hope for. Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay. Hey, Dirk, thank you so much. Really appreciate all your time.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.